So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the European Parliament Intergroup on Climate Change, Biodiversity and Sustainable Development, I'm very happy to welcome you all to today's webinar, where we'll be addressing NECPs, so the European Union's National Energy and Climate Plans for 2021 to 2030, towards a climate neutral EU. Prior to passing the floor to MEP Ms. Kumpula-Natri for the event's official kickoff, I would like to provide some housekeeping rules to our audience. So, dear participants, we would be delighted to receive your questions during the event. So for that, please feel free to use the Q&As box at the right of your screen, choosing the All Panelists option. Also, if I may kindly ask, within your questions, please make sure to also indicate the speaker to whom your question is best addressed, so that on behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, we can facilitate a fruitful discussion to follow. So once again, dear speakers and participants, thank you very much for joining us today. Without further ado, Ms. Kumpula-Natri, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ilias. And on my behalf, I'm very happy to have this seminar. The idea was when planning to have something around the national energy and climate plans, that to also have an interaction with the Council and Parliament and Commission, not only on the official trilogues, but also to talk about the future. And at the same time, we do have a European tools, but we have a different countries. And I'm happy today we will have the speakers from Finland North and from Portugal South, and also having the presidency. It is a great honor. And so to see that we do have a European tools, but then every single corner also the national action plans, how to make it reality. Pojat hiljaa, mä puhun seminaarissa. Sorry, children at home. So I want to warmly welcome also our Commissioner, Kadri Simpson, who's in charge of all the coordination around the national climate and action plans. Living in these difficult times, not being able to work together, we will know that the COVID is the main challenge at the moment. But then right away, we know also the economical challenge, which comes right after. But then we cannot forget that the climate challenge is there, and it's even a bigger wave, a bigger challenge to tackle. And if people now ask and wonder what to do and when, I think we all understand that the climate actions are needed now. There's no time to wait or time to be wasted. So EU needs ambitious climate targets and recovery process, and I'm very happy about this recovery fund, also including the 750 billion, including the 37% for the recovery that is targeted to the climate action. Also, we are still in the negotiation mode with the Connected European Facility, and then almost all the financial tools for the MFF are ready also to start the recovery, which is future proof, and then the whole next generation will go to that direction. During the event, we will discuss about the EU's climate and energy target and the role of the NECPs here. Each member state needs to submit the plan and progress reports, and it can be an important tool to assess the current state of the climate policies and show the way for the future policies to meet common goals, even the variety of the countries. It is highly important that each member is committed to this process. Sometimes the feeling that some European plan doesn't fit necessarily to yours, we can always then look back at what was the idea and promises. Sometimes in the European discussion, you feel that we are doing something like very much, but then I've learned in the Finnish way that when there was the climate neutrality target for 2035, and then we looked at the region and cities, we noticed that they were actually even more ambitious when we counted them together. So it's also interesting to hear, can we reach actually more or less when we go having the country per country ideas brought together. But even we go today to split the EU into smaller parts, I want to remind that the globe is common, and I'm so happy that yesterday we could read the first outcomes of the President Biden climate policies, and we know that they will officially join and already decided to join back to the Paris Agreement. The election promise also was already 2050 climate neutrality target, as we do have in Europe. We know even China, Japan, other parts of the world having their climate talks, it will bring us together, but at the same time, we know that leading the way, we must be even more ambitious to have a possibility for the technology also to be available for the world developed in Europe. So we will create jobs and well-being for all, taking care of this just transition, which I also wish will be found in the national energy and climate plans, as well as the European green way thinking. I wish on my behalf a very fruitful discussion during this afternoon, and I will give floor to my co-chair of this intergroup to have a few words. Mrs. Maria Spiraki, please.
Thank you, Miapetra. I would like, first of all, to congratulate you for the idea and the implementation of this webinar. Commissioner Simpson, honored to have you today with us. I would like to start with good news. According to the latest study of the European Environment Agenda, which has been published 10 days ago, Europe's shift from fossil fuel-based electricity to renewable sources has cut down greenhouse gas emissions while tackling environmental problems. Renewable power generation has nearly doubled since 2005, and it produced 34% of EU's electricity in 2019. Most of the European Union's electricity is now coal-free, and some EU member states, most recently Portugal, have pledged to close coal plants. However, other member states like Poland still have to date set from when they will finish using coal. But national energy and climate plans are playing a very, very crucial role. And allow me to change my hat and to represent Greece in this discussion by saying that in Greece, the government decided to close down all coal-powered electricity production by 2028, making Greece an EU pioneer, a front runner. Also, Greece intends by 2030 to replace 1/3 of the cars sold in the country with electric vehicles, and renewable share in gross financial energy consumption to be higher than 35%, while, as you know, the EU goal is currently 32%. It is also planned to improve energy efficiency to 38%, while the EU target is 32.5%, and Greece welcomes Hydrogen Valley's initiative, starting the implementation of such programs in Western Macedonia, one of the 41 regions of the EU which is under the decarbonization procedure. I mentioned the example of Greece not only because it is my home country, but also because I would like to highlight the role of national climate and energy plans for endorsing a roadmap for every and each member state in order to meet the Green Deal target. It is important, according to my opinion, to reward the front runners in order to incentivize other member states which are adopting a slower pace for decarbonization. And of course, just transition and leaving no one behind is not only a motto, but a real need, which we have to address immediately by leveraging all the available financial and social instruments. Having said that, at the moment, I think that we can agree that green hydrogen went from possibility to inevitability. Offshore wind is only getting started, and solar power became the world's cheapest electricity. And this is, I think, the three levels that we have to incentivize member states in order to endorse them in its own national climate and energy plan. Once again, thank you very much for organizing this event. Thank you, Commissioner, for being with us. And I give the floor back to Elias, who is in charge of this discussion. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Maria. And I thank also Elias Kampas, who had from the Secretariat a great role putting this seminar together. But before we go to the national greetings, which was very warm welcomed from the greetings from Greece, we have a keynote speaker, Kadri Simpson, with us today. Kadri has been a Minister of Commissioner for Energy since 19, this commission. But also before she had been and served as a Minister of Economic Affairs and Infrastructure of the Republic of Estonia and member of the Estonian Parliament. And during the Estonian presidency in the Council, Mrs. Simpson chaired both energy ministers and transport ministers meetings, as well as the meetings of economy ministers. Sä olet tervetullut, Mrs. Simpson. Tere tulemast.
Thank you, Miapetra, for your kind words and greeting. And dear Miapetra, Maria, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, thank you for inviting me here to speak today. And to match the challenge of climate change, we need both long-term vision and immediate action. We all know that we cannot wait until 2050 ease at the doorstep, and we cannot leave the responsibility and consequences of climate change to the next generations. So immediate actions mean a plan for transforming the way we produce, consume and transport energy across all sectors of our economy and every step of the way in the next 30 years. So 2050, it might seem a long time away, but the actions we take every day, every month, every year in the next 30 years will be the difference in reaching our mission, in reaching or missing our goal. And just 9 years away, we have an important milestone along that journey. We wish to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030. And we have lots of work to do and only 9 years to do it, because by then electrification needs to reach 40%. The share of renewable electricity has to jump from current 32% to 62%. The rate of building renovation has to double, and 24% of transport must be powered by renewable fuels. And at the same time, our oil consumption has to go down by almost 1/3 and gas consumption by 1/4. Each action means massive change. But our careful assessment shows that it is doable. Europe's power generation sector is already the most decarbonized in the world. And now we need to focus on transforming all sectors, transport and buildings in particular. Because more than 1/3 of emissions comes from buildings, especially the heating and cooling. There is huge potential in improving the energy efficiency of our houses, and our strategy for renovation wave across Europe paints a clear picture on how we can plan to do this. In the transport sector, we need to tackle every angle, developing new CO2 standards for vehicles, making clean fuels such as hydrogen more accessible, investing heavily in infrastructure, and deploying smart traffic management systems. Last September, together with the climate target plan, the Commission adopted the EU-wide assessment of the national energy and climate plans. And shortly after, DG Ener issued a specific assessment for each national energy and climate plan. And our assessment of those plans shows that not only have the member states deployed great efforts to achieve their targets for 2030, but they prepared their NSCPs against the background of the EU's renewed ambition in the context of the European Green Deal. And each of them now has a forward-looking blueprint for clean energy transformation and investment. The picture is especially encouraging when we look at renewables. We are global technological leaders, and the price of renewable energy in Europe is steadily falling. The NSCPs, according to the assessment, show that we are on track to produce more than 33% of our energy from renewable sources with current policies. And this is beyond the current 2030 target of at least 32%. The plans also confirm that the EU is also moving away from coal. The vast majority of member states have either already phased out coal or set a specific deadline for doing so. And by 2030, the use of coal would increase by 70%. The NSCPs also reveal where the greater challenges lie, for example, in energy efficiency. And indeed, there is still a gap of about 3% to reach our current target of 32.5%. The national plans, were all, of course, prepared with the previous 2030 targets in mind. And this is the reason why they reflect the positions of member states as adopted under the clean energy package. But as I said, our ambitions have increased since then, and it was essential in the process of adoption of the national energy and climate plans that we ensure they remain an important tool, also with our higher targets, achieving at least 55% reduction in greenhouse gases. And our analysis shows that each member state still has some work to do, especially on energy efficiency. But overall, we are heading in the right direction. The plans demonstrate that Europe can meet ambitious climate targets and provide a structured framework. This structured framework helps us to ensure steadying upscaled efforts. The Commission will ensure clear and inclusive follow-up to those plans, including on the progress of implementation and on the need to revise the level of ambition of the NSPs to reflect a higher carbon emission reduction target for 2030. And as I mentioned, reaching the 55% goal also means that we will have to do more on renewables and energy efficiency. The impact assessment accompanying the climate target plan foresees the need for a 38 to 40% share of renewables in our energy mix and a 36 to 39% improvement in our energy efficiency. But beyond the numbers, the role of the NSPs themselves has been shifting. I see our climate policy in 2 years. Before we proposed the Green Deal and after. Before, the national plans had a clear role as part of the governance regulation and to get an idea of where we were in relation to our energy efficiency and renewable targets. Now, they are an essential part of how we build our national recovery plans as we emerge from the pandemic. And our recovery plan has the Green Deal at its heart. Sustainable green investments are the way forward if we are to remedy the present while preparing for the future. And when preparing the recovery and resilience plans, each member state needs to ensure that 37% of all spending is dedicated to climate-related projects that are ambitious and that pave the way for a greener future. And the NSPs have a crucial role to play here as well, as they will provide input for these plans, identifying projects for a green transition. I also mentioned the gains we need to make in renewables. We will be reviewing the renewable energy, including the targets by June this year. And the NSPs will go a long way towards that aim. So, ladies and gentlemen, to know where we are going, we must first know where we are beginning. And the NSPs shed a light on where we are striving and where we fall down. And they will be an important tool in helping us to eventually reach climate neutrality. And to accompany the challenges for a sustainable energy transition, we have dedicated 2020 to rethink and reset our priorities. And we propose strategies that will shape our actions for the years to come on clean hydrogen, renovation wave, and offshore renewable. And 2021 we will be looking at ways to implement the path to climate neutrality, consolidating the role of the NSPs as a solid framework for increased climate and energy ambition. And I'm looking forward to continue the discussion with the European Parliament and the member states on the topic, and I wish you a good meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you, Kadri, Tana. It was very nice that you brought the big picture and also the further steps to take. Thank you so much. I still had the pleasure to introduce the next speaker because I know Krista Mikkonen very well from the Parliament. And then nowadays, Krista is a Minister of Environmental Issues and Climate in Finland. She's served in the Parliament before and been the chair of the Green Parliamentary Group and also done a long political career at the City Council of Joensuu, which is in the eastern Finland. And as I come personally from the other part of the Finland, namely on the west coast, can I, Krista, introduce and saying that isn't it so that we want our children and next generation also to enjoy winters and possibility to ski on the lakes and ski in the seas? And maybe my question then to Bruno Sousa from Portugal would be that would you do everything that also the Portuguese children will have an ability to enjoy the Portuguese summers, not to be too hot and dry? So we will not wish you to have too much snow in south, but then for us it is important. So the extreme weather and our generational promises are important, but I'm very happy to introduce a friend, Krista Mikkonen, who also chaired the council just like finished 1 year ago when Finland finished the presidency. Please, Minister Mikkonen, floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mipe, and it's just like you said. In Finland, we have these 4 seasons, and we really want to have those also in future, so our children and our grandchildren can enjoy those also the winter time. And thank you for organizing this very timely discussion, and thank you for your interest in our experiences in Finland. Well, as you know, Finland's target is to be climate neutral by 2035. This goal is the backbone of our climate policy. Our government chose this year because it was advice of our National Climate Science Panel. The panel provided an assessment of when Finland needs to be climate neutral to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees in line with the Paris Agreement. And the answer was a year 2035. So this target was chosen based on science. Well, now for the past 1.5 years, our government has been working to find measures to be climate neutral by 2035 and carbon negative soon after that. At the same time, we must find ways to do this in a socially just way. We are looking for new emissions reductions and ways to grow carbon sinks. We didn't start from nothing. Many of the policies are already in place. For example, a ban on coal by 2029 and target to halve transport emissions by 2030 were decided already by the previous government and parliament. Well, now the government has already set indicative emission reduction budgets to different sectors and reforms, for example, energy tax reform. We will take stock this spring of progress we have made and how much we still have to do to secure the path to climate neutrality by 2035. I want to share with you one especially successful way of working. Last year, our government prepared, together with our industries, the carbon neutrality roadmaps. All the key industrial sectors, for example, technology, energy, chemistry, and forest industries, were involved. And actually, we started with those 2 major industries, but soon after, we noticed that all the other sectors and industries wanted to join in and do their own roadmaps. And now we have those maps totally, I think the number is 16. So our industry really wanted to be involved with climate policy, and they really wanted to think what they can do to make sure that we can achieve our climate target. In these maps, industries seek possibilities to reduce emissions and find measures and conditions that would help them to do so. The results of this work exceeded all expectations, and now we want to help and encourage them to do the action. To sum up, a lot has happened and is happening in Finland. Yet, because of the time frame, all this was not reflected in our National Energy and Climate Plan, NECP. The Finnish NEC plan was mostly prepared before our new ambitious goals, so it is based on less ambitions and now already outdated climate goals. The plan contains Finland's national targets and policy measures to reach the EU's previous and now updated 2030 targets. The plan outlines the impact of existing policy measures on the evolution of greenhouse gas emissions, renewable energy, and energy efficiency up to 2040. So it provides a very useful starting point. The plan also assesses the impact of planned and existing policy measures on investment. As I know that this intergroup also works closely with biodiversity issues, I want to say a few words on the biodiversity elements in our plan. In Finland, we have a cold climate and biomass has a significant role in our heating system. Also, the growing use of biofuels in traffic sector adds pressures on biomass. According to the impact assessments in our plan, increased wood use may have negative impacts on biodiversity. The impacts on biodiversity can be mitigated by introducing new measures to uphold the biodiversity of forests. This can be done by several ways, such as leaving dead trees to a greater extent in logging areas and avoiding loggings in valuable nature areas. On the other hand, this finding shows that in our future policies, we cannot rely too heavily on burning in our heat production. New heat production methods, for example, geothermal heat and heat pumps, must be preferred. This example highlights two important things. One, NECP impact assessments give us valuable information, which we must take account in preparing future policies. And secondly, we have a growing need to integrate biodiversity and climate policies more closer together. Well, now leaving the past behind and turning to the future. While there is a lot we can do at the national level, it's clear that for a country with just domestic ambition, action at the European level is extremely important. The EU's new 2030 climate target of at least 55% shows our strong commitment to climate action. We would have preferred a target achieved through emission reductions only and to have a separate target for sinks. That would have been far simpler. And that's why I want to stress that reducing the net emissions by 25% should be seen as a minimum target, and that the emission reduction measures both in the EU and nationally must be planned so that the target will be exceeded clearly. We crucially need business policies and tools at the European level. I want to raise two topics especially. First, we must strengthen and tighten the EU emissions trading system. And second, we must find ways to tackle transport emissions. We also need effective measures on aviation emissions and to implement the new CORSIA system in a harmonized manner across the EU. We therefore welcome and look forward to the whole package of legislative proposals, Fit for 55, that will be published this summer. I want also to take this opportunity and thank the European Parliament for your ambitious work with European climate policies. We are at a turning point. Targeting the measures to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic to climate action is a historical opportunity to bring the world, Europe, and Finland on a track that is in line with the Paris Agreement. Boosting investments in clean solutions is an effective way to create new jobs and promote green growth and better future. So that's what we need to do now. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you so much. Yeah, Ilias is the online, yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Ms. Kumpula-Natri. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I think that having received very well all the best practices from Finland, it would be of great added value for the continuation of the event to also shed some light on the outgoing presidency of the Council of the EU. Therefore, with great pleasure to introduce Ms. Ariane Richter, who is the current Energy Attaché at the Permanent Representation of the Federal Republic of Germany to the EU. Prior to this position, also Ms. Richter was the chair of the Energy Working Party during German presidency last year. So we're very much looking forward to your intervention. Ms. Richter, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ilias, and thank you, Kiitos, Ms. Kumpula-Natri, for inviting me to this event. I'm very happy for the opportunity to represent the German perspective today in this very timely discussion. During our Council presidency last year, we made the national energy and climate plans a key topic in the discussions in the Council. We had several exchanges on this on working party level, on the general EU-wide assessment of the national energy and climate plans, as well as when the individual assessments came out in the context of the climate target plan, as Commissioner Simpson just explained. We then also had an exchange at the ministerial level in our Energy Council in December, right after the European Council decided to raise the climate target to at least 55%, and had a look at how we should adapt energy targets in light of this raised climate target. And it also proved very useful to have this tool of the national energy and climate plans in the context of the recovery. We had several exchanges also on directors general level to address the issue of recovery post-COVID, and it turned out that having these plans provides a very useful tool for member states to have a basis to start from to develop their national recovery plans. So we really think the NECP process that was introduced has proven to be very important, very useful monitoring, but also steering tool of this green transition. And they will become more important now looking forward when we even raise our ambitions further. Let me give a short overview of what has been going on in Germany in the energy sector, especially in the ongoing legislative period that will end this September when we have our next national elections. In the electricity sector, further significant progress has been made in the expansion of renewable energies. In 2019, their share of gross electricity consumption was at around 42% in Germany. Forecasts for 2020 show that the share of renewable energy in gross electricity consumption has increased further. In the first half of 2020, forecasts assume 50.3 percentage points in gross electricity consumption. So renewables are already the dominant power source in the German energy mix. A whole series of key advances in energy policy and decisions that were made in Germany in the course of the current legislative periods have contributed to this. Let me look at a few examples. We decided to phase out coal coal-fired power generation until 2038 via a process of very broad discussions that included all stakeholders, industry, as well as unions, but also environmental and climate NGOs. We introduced a new RES Act, a new Renewable Energies Act that was adopted last year and entered into force on the 1st of January this year, that for the first time sets into law climate neutrality until 2050 as a target, and that adopts the necessary measures to reach 65% of renewable energy share in 2030. We also introduced a new law to synchronize grid expansion with further RES generation expansion. In addition to this, we introduced a CO2 price starting on the 1st of January this year. A CO2 price in the form of a national emissions trading scheme in the heating and transport sectors was introduced. By increasing the price of fossil fuels, we ensure the competitiveness of renewables, and that will increase in the sectors of heating and transport in particular. This is particularly important since we have to make progress in these sectors. At the same time, we use additional income from this trading scheme and the CO2 certificates to relieve households as well as companies and to further finance climate protection measures. Looking ahead in the coming years, the price of CO2 and the competitiveness of renewables will rise continuously. In order to address the risk of carbon leakage and to promote climate protection in the heating and transport sectors throughout Europe, we support the introduction of a similar system to be launched at European level, for example, via the expansion of the current ETS or an additional form of emission trading scheme for the heating and transport sectors. Let me give an outlook and a few general remarks on 5 fundamental challenges that, in my opinion, we will have to consider in the future. So first, we need further efforts to increase the use of renewables outside the electricity sector. Smart sector coupling and the use of renewable electricity in the building sector and in transport play an important role here. We have to tackle the necessary reforms in the area of levies. Levies and taxes in energy, the EU will play an important role here to provide a coherent approach, considering the upcoming review of the Energy Tax Directive, the ongoing review of the state aid framework, as well as the proposed introduction of a carbon border adjustment mechanism. Second, we must keep the grid expansion synchronized with the expansion of renewables in order to guarantee the functionality of the overall system in the future. It will be of central importance to maintain social acceptance of the energy transition and network expansion. This means that we have to advocate quick and steady progress in grid expansion in parallel to further strengthening RES targets. Third, when it comes to hydrogen, we need to move more from strategy to implementation. We have to be able to ramp up the market by creating suitable regulatory framework conditions domestically and at the same time with our EU partners and the necessary import infrastructures for hydrogen. In the future, green hydrogen is the first choice and a declared goal. However, while ramping up and building a market, we will also have to consider other colors of hydrogen. Fourth, we must be careful not to just keep discussing new goals, but to also implement existing goals while maintaining acceptance, competitiveness, and cost efficiency. After the new EU 2030 target is adopted, we will have to talk about how to achieve and share this extra effort. Fifth, in the debate about the implementation of our goals, we should think more European and international and make cost efficiency the guiding principle. For the debate on how to achieve climate targets, we should think more in the direction of market-driven solutions, such as expanding CO2 pricing. We look forward to the Commission's proposals in the Fit for 55 package this June, and very much anticipate these discussions in the Council. So thank you very much for the invitation, and I look forward to the discussion today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richter, for your key remarks. Moving on with today's event agenda, it's with pleasure to introduce Mr. Bruno Souza, who is the Energy and Atomic Questions Attaché at the Portuguese PERMREP. Mr. Souza has gained experience in the field of energy in the Directorate General of Energy and Geological Resources, and he has previously also worked as an advisor in the State Secretary of Energy. So it's with great pleasure to have you with us today. Mr. Souza, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Dear Excellencies, hello and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, I want to thank to the organization for inviting me to be here to present the good example of the Portuguese NECP. And let me say that since the beginning of the year, this will be the first event that I will not introduce the Portuguese priorities for the presidency and being here to talk about my country. So about our NECP, and starting with the big numbers that are fixed there, we have the objective to reduce GHG emissions in 45 to 55 in 2030. Then we have the objective of 47% of penetration of renewable energies in the final energy consumption and 35% in terms of energy efficiency. And we establish a level of 15% for the level of interconnections. Although all sectors of activity contribute to the reduction of emissions, we think that in the next decade it will be energy sector that will make the greatest contribution, assuming a particularly relevant role in the transition to a decarbonized society in the energy transition. Portugal's strategy for 2030 is thus based on a combination of several policy options and measures, as well as technical, logical options, seeking to find synergies between the various options. The path to a carbon-neutral economy requires joint action in several strategic areas, with priority to energy efficiency, reinforcement of the diversification of energy sources and vectors, increased electrification, reinforcement and modernization of infrastructure, development of interconnection, market stability and investment, reconfiguration and digitalization of market, incentivize the research and innovation, promotion of low carbon processes, products and services, and better energy services, and an informed choice for consumers. Energy efficiency is crucial for the decarbonization of society in response to the need for a competitive economy and a resilient, safe, and self-sufficient energy system. In this context, Portugal is committed to the principle of energy efficiency first in decisions about investment projects in the energy sector, in the logic of sustainability and cost effectiveness. The energy transition in Portugal will undoubtedly go through the electricity sector. Portugal has enormous potential for the development of a decarbonized electricity generation sector due to the availability of indigenous renewable resources such as water, wind, sun, biomass, and geothermal energy. In order to reinforce the installed capacity of renewable origin, in particular for the photovoltaic solar, Portugal decided to launch 2 auctions one in 2019, another in 2020, that beat world records, as you heard on the news. It is also worth mentioning the investment already in the next decade in the production and incorporation of renewable gases, such as hydrogen and biomethane, which promotes a more intense substitution of fossil fuels and reduces the country's energy dependence. The growing recognition of the importance of renewable gases, in particular hydrogen, is based on the fact that it allows to storage, energy, and preparation of other renewable fuels, contributing to enhance the fulfillment of the national objectives of incorporating renewable resources in the final consumption of energy and for the decarbonization of consumption, with particular emphasis on industry and mobility. This new orientation comes from the fact that Portugal has very favorable conditions for the installation of a green hydrogen production industry with an export potential. The main advantage being the low costs of producing electricity from renewable sources. The development of a green hydrogen production industry in Portugal has the potential to boost a whole new economy, combined with the enormous potential for the decarbonization of various sectors. For sure that you already had acknowledged of the project that we are developing in Sines to produce green hydrogen with a combination from solar and onshore wind to use internally, but also to export. Like it was already mentioned here today, we closed very recently our remaining 2 coal power plants, and one was located in Sines. Finally, I wanted to mention that energy interconnections are essential for the development of an internal energy market, guaranteeing security of supply, improving the functioning of energy systems, increasing competition and stability in energy markets, promoting market integration, greater justice, and balance in the definition energy costs and prices, and contributing to the achievement of energy, climate, and competitive targets at EU level. Portugal's NECP, besides being compatible with the overall objectives of European Union, it is among the most ambitious member states in these terms. Once again, thank you for the invitation, and it was a very good idea to bring this subject into the agenda, and looking forward for the discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sousa. On behalf of the Secretariat of the Intergroup, it's with great pleasure to see such an ambitious work plan with regards to the Portuguese presidency, but also to the presented NECPs. Let me just take the opportunity, first of all, to thank all of our previous speakers for respecting the allocated time frame given. Moving ahead, I would just like to kindly remind our audience once more to send us their questions via the Q&As box that should appear at the right-hand side of your platform. And within that, you can choose the all panelists option, and please feel free to also indicate the speaker to whom your question is best addressed. Looking ahead to today's debates, I just noticed that Mr. Hadjimarkakis, on behalf of Hydrogen Europe, has not yet connected to the platform. So I would like to give a fresh twist in today's discussion by welcoming Mr. Antonio Almagro to take the floor. Mr. Almagro is the Director for Energy of the Projects Directorate at the European Investment Bank. So it's a great pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Almagro. And I think at this stage we're all very much looking forward to your remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's really remarkable that we're exactly on time, following the schedule. So I'll try to stick to the time that has been given to me. And thank you for the opportunity to give you this overview, a quick overview of what the European Investment Bank is doing to support energy transition. I have to start saying that the bank is strongly supporting the EU targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 55% by 2030 and to become climate neutral by 2050. This is covered in our climate bank roadmap, which we have published in November, very recently, November 2020. And this roadmap sets a clear target to lend 1 trillion euros to climate action and environmental sustainability by 2030, and therefore becoming effectively the EU climate bank. We also have a second document, which is very important for this, which is the energy lending policy that was approved by our governing bodies 1 year earlier in November 2019. And as highlighted in this lending policy, there's a total transformation of the energy system that is needed. We all know that the infrastructure investments that are needed to deliver this transformation are unprecedented in speed and scale. According to a Commission's impact assessment, is it estimated that the EU needs to invest more than 400 billion euros a year in the energy sector. The investment to increase energy efficiency take the lion's share, but there's also investment needs in terms of the supply side, and that have to double basically compared to the previous decade. And this is also where energy transition comes into play. To put things into context, the EIB lending to the energy sector in the EU is about 12 billion euros per year. This is significant, but still it's only 3% or about the annual investments that are needed during this decade. So in relative terms, not that much compared to the needs. So first, when we designed our lending policy, or new lending policy, there was a need to focus our lending activities. For this purpose, the bank took the bold decision to phase out the support to projects that rely on fossil fuels, including natural gas. That was an important change for the bank, looking also at the projects that have been supported in the past. And also that makes the bank the first IFI to stop this type of lending, and that illustrates our strong commitment. The second decision that was taken in the lending policy was to move a little bit more upstream and have proper discussions with member states at sector level. And in this context, the NECPs have become an important tool to provide a long-term visibility and to develop project pipeline. So over the past year, we have been using the NECPs to engage with member states and to discuss how to deploy our financial products and advisory service to support the decarbonization targets. The focus of this engagement during this past year have been the 10 member states that are part of the EIB's energy transition package, which basically correspond to the countries benefiting from the modernization fund. And so basically the countries that joined the EU in 2004 and later. So given the high investment needs in these countries for the energy transition, our lending policy allows us to finance up to 75% of the project cost in this country. So this is part of the EIB contribution to a just transition. To date, in the context of these NECPs dialogues, we have organized 12 bilateral meetings with energy ministries and public stakeholders, in which we discuss investment needs in the countries and present the EIB products, basically loans and advisory services. We are typically aware of most investment projects that are at an advanced stage of development, but this dialogue has been proved to be very useful for us to have a more forward-looking vision and to help identify and support projects in the future just to cover the investment needs. So and also in the context of the NECP dialogue, we have co-organized 2 energy finance workshops virtually, virtual workshops in Romania and Bulgaria, with energy ministries in those countries and also with other stakeholders, including the European Commission. And this has been used to present financial instruments and to present the facilities that the bank make available to support projects for the energy transition and to support basically the plans that the member states have outlined in their NECPs. This type of workshops provided more transparency on available funding sources at EU level, so not just lending, but also grant available to member states, and ultimately will support the development and financing of projects needed in the context of the NECP targets. The wall of investments ahead of us is huge. And this is something that requires working together at EU level. So it's not something that different parties can do separately. There are other areas of at EU level that we are cooperating to achieve the EU energy and climate targets. And in fact, these energy finance workshops are a good example of cooperation between the Commission and the EIB to reach these targets. There are other examples of cooperation that comes in addition to the focus on lending that I mentioned at the beginning, and this dialogue with member states. And for example, the EIB is managing the Modernization Fund and the Innovation Fund that were created by the EU ETS directive. And also the bank is delivering technical advisory through joint facilities with the Commission, like JASPERS, which covers all the sectors, but covers also the energy sector. And as of this year, is also covering projects on the just transition. And we will, of course, rely on InvestEU to further boost our investments in the sector. So in my 5 minutes that are allotted for this, I think this is a nutshell, the approach of the bank to support energy transition. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer questions when they come in later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Almagro. It's now with pleasure to introduce Mr. Yorgo Hadjimarkakis, who is the Secretary General of Hydrogen Europe since 2016. Previously, Mr. Hadjimarkakis has worked as representative of Infineon Technologies in Brussels and has also been a member of the European Parliament from 2004 until 2014. Importantly enough, inter alia, in the Committee for Industry, Research and Energy. So, Mr. Hadjimarkakis, thank you very much for being with us today.
Many thanks for the invitation, and thanks to give me an opportunity to speak about the NECPs and the role, especially also for hydrogen. These NECPs have a very central role to play in the transformation, as we know, of Europe's energy system from today's fossil-based system to something new. And we have a clear strategy as Hydrogen Europe. We call it the replace strategy. So we are firmly convinced that all the fossil carriers, energy carriers, can be replaced. First of all, for us, gray hydrogen. And gray hydrogen is used today as a feedstock and unfortunately has a fossil character and can be replaced by decarbonized, fully decarbonized or renewable hydrogen, but also coal, oil and natural gas shortly or in the long run can be replaced. So that is why it plays a role whether hydrogen is mentioned in the NECPs also, and especially because of the big plans that have been now submitted to the European Commission by the member states with regards to the recovery and resilience plans and the resilience funds. And basically, it's very important to know whether a member state believes in that technology or not, and whether projects that we will build up on hydrogen and around hydrogen would play a role in these member states or not. So the good news is that in today's plans that have been submitted, hydrogen is mentioned over 1,000 times. Only one member state does not point out hydrogen as an essential ingredient in the energy system of tomorrow, and all the others do. So this country is Finland, but all the others do. And I have to say, Finland, in the meanwhile, has become a quite strong player with regards to its members, so industry members. The current versions of NECP see hydrogen as an important key technology to research and invest in, but we notice that some NECPs also feel that hydrogen still lacks maturity for wide-scale applications in the short term, and this has changed. So in the meanwhile, all these plans, of course, have been worked upon, especially the last years, but a lot of things happened in 2020, so the year that we just left, and hydrogen now is ready to play its role as an enabler of a low-carbon economy, and that also can be seen in the newly presented and submitted plans with regards to the RRF, so the Recovery and Resilience Plan, where in the meanwhile, member states, in combination of the NECP plus the national hydrogen strategy, have earmarked some 38, in the meanwhile also 40 40 billion euro for projects in that field until 2030. So that's quite a big chunk. Let me tell you who are the ambitious countries and who are, so to say, the followers. So the ambitious countries when it comes to hydrogen reflected in the NECPs are Austria, France, Germany, the Netherlands, and Portugal. So these are the countries that clearly mark hydrogen as a very, very important point. I personally might say that especially Portugal, the current presidency, might become one of the giants, if you wish, in hydrogen if they combine both the NECP and the RRF, and of course their strategy. Then you have a group of followers, and I would mention here especially Belgium, Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, and Slovenia. When it comes to the NECPs, when it comes to real activities, I would mention also, as I said, Finland and Greece, because they have become very, very interested in that field. I would also like to say that the hydrogen strategies are now trying to play a role in combining all the national activities under one European, so to say, roof. You can see here the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance as one tool to bring that all together. European Clean Hydrogen Alliance will try to develop a quality seal, if you like, with regards to flagship projects that are then easier to be detected for the ones who want to fund projects or the ones who want to invest into projects. This is important because there will be lots of projects presented, and we want, of course, that you have a reliability with such a quality seal when it comes to projects with regards to hydrogen. There is also a parallel process, the so-called IPCI process. IPCIs are the important projects of common European interest. This is run by member states, and we are in the process of matchmaking, of bringing projects that exist together so that they become European projects, but nevertheless are funded on a national level. Maybe I might say that IPCIs waive state aid rules to a certain extent. These rules will be changed this year, in the year 21, considerably, so to make it even easier in order to bring funding into the projects without cumbersome procedures. That is something that you can see in a three-step approach: NECPs as the basis, then the hydrogen strategies combined, of course, with the plans for the RRF, and altogether this would lead then to the project engineering that takes place this year, 21, and as of 22, for at least 3 years, maximum 5 years, an implementation of these flagships that then, of course, will be followed up by market incentivization schemes as of 25. I stop here because I think I could show somehow the relevance of these NECPs in the hydrogen sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hadjimarkakis, for your input, also for your review on member states' NECPs, because I'm sure it really served to trigger a stimulating discussion to follow. Big thanks also to our audience, as we receive more and more questions now via the chat box, via the Q&A box, apologies. So now it's with pleasure to introduce our next speaker, who is Mr. Wendel Trio. Mr. Trio is the Director of Climate Action Network Europe since September 2011. And in this role, Mr. Trio provides strategic guidance for a network of over 170 NGOs and ensures high-level representation of the NGO movement towards decision makers. Prior to that position, Mr. Trio had also worked for a plethora of NGOs such as Oxfam and Greenpeace for more than 30 years. So, Mr. Trio, looking forward to your remarks as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address this important meeting. I cannot stress the importance of the NECPs. They are really a crucial element in the implementation of the Green Deal and implementation of climate policy in Europe. Of course, setting targets is incredibly important to set the objectives of where we are going to, but ensuring the implementation of those targets is, of course, evenly crucial. And that's why we as NGOs, both in Brussels, but even more so in the member states, have been engaging very strongly in both the development of the NECPs at the national level, as well as in the analysis of both the drafts and the final NECPs as we know them now. Of course, as I said, targets are very important, and we have seen a crucial change of the 2030 climate target to at least 55%, potentially even going beyond that, depending on the outcome of the trilogues on the climate law, where the Council and the European Parliament are sitting together to come to a conclusion. But at least there is an increase of the targets of 15%. And so in that way, the NECPs, as we know them now, will need to be adapted to that new reality with both a new climate target and potentially in the near future also new targets for energy efficiency and renewable energy. And so in that process, in that need for adaptation of the national energy and climate plans, we have a number of lessons learned, a number of suggestions based on our analysis of the current NECPs and what the future needs to bring. And I will be brief. I will have 5 of these suggestions. First of all, when revising the NECPs and adapting them to the new reality, countries need to look at overachieving the targets rather than at justly achieving the targets. What we've seen with the current NECPs is that we have only just reached the outdated now 40% climate target and only just reached the renewable energy target, but are underperforming on the EU-wide energy efficiency target. And so countries would need to look already well beyond what will be needed in the future, and in their proposals developed under the NECPs will need to look at overachieving their target so that they're also ready for future changes to the target, keeping in mind we have agreed as a European Union to go towards climate neutrality or net zero greenhouse gas emissions by the middle of the century, but might need to do more in line of the other big target that we've set, which is to try to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. Secondly, obviously, the NECPs are not only about how to achieve the targets, but they're actually also about how to achieve policy coherence in between the different sectors. And that's where NECPs and having both climate and energy into the plans have been an incredible improvement as to before, where you had definitely at the national level in many occasions climate ministries and energy ministries and potentially agriculture ministries all having their own plans. By integrating that into one plan, a lot of progress has been made, but there's still a lot of room for further progress in ensuring not only energy and climate policies to be integrated, but also taxation policies to be part of this, and other more holistic approaches. So that will be a second important recommendation, that still a lot of progress can be made on the policy coherence. Thirdly, very important for us is that the NECPs need to look at phasing out and at the transition as a whole, and phasing out fossil fuels. As a basic requirement, all NECPs would need to indicate how countries will phase out fossil fuel subsidies. Many of the NECPs currently are failing on that, and there's only a few countries that really have indicated how they will tackle fossil fuel subsidies. This is urgent, has been reiterated just earlier this week by the Foreign Affairs Council in their Council conclusions, that a global fossil fuel subsidies phase out is important. So definitely that also needs to happen in Europe and would need to be integrated in the NECPs. But similarly, we don't need only a phase out of the subsidies, but also a phase out of fossil fuels as such, and only a few of the NECPs actually include a phase out date for coal. Many more do not yet include that, and actually none of the NECPs currently plan for the phase out of gas, which also will need to happen. So those are things that will need to be taken up much more strongly. Fourth recommendations, obviously, when most of the national energy and climate plans were under development, we were not confronted yet with the COVID crisis, and we didn't have the 1.7 trillion new MFF and next generation EU, but we need to see the coherence between the NECPs on one hand and the recovery and resilience plans, the cohesion operational spending plans, as well as the territorial just transition plans. So all of these plans would need to have coherence so that we can ensure that the investments and funding support that is being made in the coming years are actually in line with the broad objectives under the NECPs, and that the NECPs make optimal use of the new funding and investment opportunities that come with the 1.7 trillion euros that is available. And then fifthly, last recommendation is on public participation. We have seen in a number of countries that there's been serious efforts from governments to involve civil society in the development of the plans, and that civil society will be involved in some of the implementation. But this actually needs to happen in all 27 countries, as engaging the public, as taking into account social impacts of the plans is crucially important for them to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trio, for your remarks. Please allow me to also echo some of your statements that indeed a lot of progress has been made, but still there is room for improvement, while implementation is also key. Thank you very much also for mentioning all the policy developments under the Fit for 55 legislative package of the Commission at this stage. And well, I think also all eyes are set on the trialogue on the climate law. So thank you very much for your policy recommendations. I think they serve perfectly as a transition to our next set of speakers, which are both MEPs, Mr. Kokkalis and Ms. Paulus. Starting with Mr. Kokkalis, I'm very glad to introduce Mr. Kokkalis, being a member of the European Parliament, member of the Left Group in the European Parliament, and also a key member of the Committee on the Environment, Public Health and Food Safety. Additionally, a substitute member on the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development, the Committee on Fisheries, and also the Committee on Budget. Mr. Kokkalis, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elias, and good evening to everyone taking part in this very interesting up to now discussion. Well, I've been asked to have a reaction, and my reaction is that it is obvious by now that creating the NECPs was a very good idea, since now we have a proper format within which we can integrate all the policies necessary to reach climate neutrality. However, what is crucial now as we enter this decade of delivery is to realize, and even while expecting the third trilogue, the last trilogue of the climate law, to realize that 55% reduction in emissions for the European Union falls short of the IPCC goal for the 1.5 scenario. So we will have to do more, and we'll have to do better and faster. And we fully expect to see the new NECPs being renewed for the Fit for 55 for now, to be much more ambitious, and also tackle the Titanian struggle to integrate not only the RRF, but also the new multi-annual financial framework monies. Having said that, I think that it's extremely important also to remove ourselves a little bit from the bird's eye view from the NECPs and looking at numbers and technologies and all that, which is fantastic. However, we have to see how they're actually being implemented on the ground. In my home country, in Greece, we have a very ambitious and surprisingly ambitious decarbonization target, but we are severely lacking in terms of public consultation, and also in terms of encouraging energy communities and other ways to involve local communities, both in design and also in participating in delivering this transition. This is a transition that is necessary. This is a transition that we have all promised to deliver. And I think that going forward towards Glasgow and COP26, we'll need to work with the Commission to look into having a much more ambitious and effective NECPs. Thank you very much for this discussion.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokalis, for your intervention. Our next speaker is MEP, Ms. Jutta Paulus, who is a member of the European Parliament for the Greens Group, a member of the Committee on Environment, Public Health and Food Safety as well, but also a substitute member for the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, as well as the Committee on Transport and Tourism. Ms. Paulus, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for this important event and for giving me the possibility to share my thoughts. And I think we have heard a lot of very interesting things from our distinguished speakers. I would like to throw in a few numbers because they are really impressive. Agora Energiewende, which is a German think tank, came out last week with a new number. We had 38% of gross electricity production 2020 in the European Union coming from renewables. So renewables overtaking fossil fuels in electricity production for the first time, and for the first time wind and solar combined overtaking coal. And I think these numbers show that the tide has indeed turned, but we must not sit back and say, well, that's great, so we don't have to do anything. On the contrary, these numbers will have to triple if we want to reach our goals in 2030. And as some of my predecessors have just pointed out, we actually need to overachieve these goals. The good news is it is possible, it is feasible. Solar becomes ever more cost efficient. The freshest number from Spain is actually 14 euros per megawatt hour in an auction. From Portugal, we have heard even lower numbers. And wind onshore is at 50 euros per megawatt hour. Offshore is at around 60 and 65 euros per megawatt hour. So these are already prices where fossil fuels are hardly able to compete. And we have added value if we phase out fossil fuels and turn to renewables. I'm of course talking of air pollution, which is the reason for 400,000 premature deaths in the European Union every year. So I would like to see these impressive developments reflected in revised national energy and climate plans, because renewables are at the base of any climate action. The energy and industry and building sector, all decarbonization, and of course also all hydrogen production will only be possible if we massively ramp out renewables. And now I think that the European Union should make sure that we secure this key industry in Europe. Due to the developments like 10 years ago, when China ramped up their production facilities, solar industry has not completely, but almost completely vanished from Europe. And we should make sure that we bring it back, because we see what Joe Biden is doing. We also see what China is doing. They too are ramping up their solar production. So if we don't want to fall behind because of a shortage of supply of solar panels, we should think about creating a new IPCEI, like a 1 gigawatt solar panel factory. And we have an additional opportunity of rolling out solar, because you all know the renovation wave that the Commission has called out for making our buildings more energy efficient. It would be the greatest opportunity to combine energy efficiency measures with renewable energy measures, because if you have already scaffolding at your house, it's no problem putting some solar panels on the roof. And we have the additional opportunity of actively involving our citizens in the energy transition. And there, I'm really glad that you said that, Petros. It's really important to have citizens involved, to show them the advantages, to let them participate, and to not impose on them climate action. We are all in this together, and we will only solve it together. And therefore, it's key that we have the acceptance and the participation of our citizens. So thank you very much for giving me the floor, and thanks for organizing this event.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paulus, for your remarks as well. At this stage, judging by the interest of all the participants, I think everybody's looking forward to the Q&A session, so we can move ahead with that. Please allow me to address the first question to member states. So the first question reads that, now after China, US and others are moving fast and aim for exports. There will be a competition on developing solutions, therefore. Will the climate and energy strategies support also the development of climate businesses for exports? At this stage, I would like to invite our speakers to open their cameras and take the floor upon their goodwill. I see that Mr. Souza has opened his camera. I just noticed you're muted. If you want, I can read the question one more time. So that would be on whether the climate and energy strategies support also the development of climate businesses for exports.
I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you now very well. Thank you.
So about the strategy for exports, I want to join my voice to MEP Jutta Paulus that mentioned that is very important to keep the value chains here in Europe, especially on renewables. And we have to give a big push here in our continent to continue or to become the front runners in this. We think I think that it is very important that the European Union can be united, and for this the PCIs are very important, like MEP Jutta Paulus also mentioned, not only for solar technologies, but also going into the direction of Yorgo, into hydrogen, and now also with a new wave for batteries. We had news this week that we will have a new wave for batteries, and we are advancing in the PCIs for hydrogen. And in Portugal, we think that will be very important to increase the share of renewables, so we can produce green hydrogen and to export to other member states. Hydrogen will be very, very important to decarbonize the hard-to-abate sectors like industry and transport. And it is good to be mentioned as the front runner by Jorgo. And we will keep this intention to keep as a front runner on this. So thanks a lot, and I see that also Ariane wants to speak about this, so I will give her the floor.
Okay, I'll just take over directly. Thank you, Bruno. Just to give full support to what Bruno just said, we also think that it's very important to create European unity to do exactly that, to go ahead in developing new technologies. In addition to everything that was already said regarding hydrogen, regarding also the production of further solar technologies, I would like to point to offshore wind, which is something that we focused on under our presidency last year. We had council conclusions on fostering European cooperation in offshore and other renewables that stressed exactly that, this additional focus on European cooperation and moving forward in this technology that currently we still are world leaders as the European Union, and we have to move quickly to keep it this way. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bruno. Thank you very much, Ariane, as well, for your replies. Please allow me to, at this stage, try to cluster a couple of questions because they're both addressing technology neutrality. So the one quotes, "There is a large and centralized district heating system in Helsinki that helps in energy transition. Energy sector integration will be implemented with forestry industry and other businesses. So how can we best ensure technology neutrality in the EU energy transition?" And the second one being that to utilize bio-based raw materials and industrial waste heat are good tools to reach technology and climate neutral solutions. So once again, will technology neutrality be taking note in NECPs and how? I understand this also addresses Mr. Souza and Ms. Richter. Mr. Souza, you can take the floor if you want.
Okay, I will start again. Technological neutrality. It is a big discussion. Back this principle, and it is not only on the heat cooling systems, but it is on everything linked with this transition. So if we want to achieve our targets and we want to achieve them quickly, we have to take steps towards this direction. And the direction in my country is through renewables, through renewable hydrogen. And we also respect that every country has these conditions and they must ensure their security of supply. So they will need a transitional period. And for that, we must use other energy sources, but always thinking about the main targets that we fixed here at the European level. So yes, technological neutrality, but thinking about the greater good.
Thank you, Mr. Souza, very much. It seems that there was a network issue towards the end of your intervention, so we weren't able to hear your conclusion remarks. I don't know if that would be possible to kindly ask to repeat your statement. I mean, of course, the closing of that.
Okay, I don't know where you stand. So I was saying that of course we have to respect the technological neutrality of member states, but at the same time thinking about the transition and taking the steps that are needed towards the transition. And if we want climate neutrality in 2050, we have to take actions. And like is said, we have to take immediate actions, not only to achieve the targets that we establish, but if possible, to overachieve it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Souza. Thank you also very much for bravely jumping in into every question that we received from the audience. Perhaps worth to have Ms. Richter's also point of view to this question on technology neutrality. Otherwise, there is another question following up for you, Ms. Richter, that perhaps I can quickly read out so that you can combine your answers. The question then would be on whether you could perhaps kindly specify the colors of hydrogen that Germany aims at supporting in the short term. For example, would this also consider nuclear hydrogen?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't have that much to add to the technology neutrality question. I think it's exactly right what Bruno specified. We do hold the principle of technological neutrality highly in the Council. We have different approaches among member states to design our energy mix, and we respect this mutually. So I think this has worked well in the past, and we would continue keeping it this way. When it comes to hydrogen and our national policy, we support green hydrogen, but we think conditions for blue hydrogen should also be specified in a way that helps ramping up the market for hydrogen in this way. This also includes more innovative technologies like turquoise hydrogen, like gained from pyrolysis. Hydrogen specifically from nuclear energy in Germany is not really a question because we're phasing out nuclear energy. So in Germany, we don't support this.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richter, for the kind clarification. The next question, I think, would be best addressed to Mr. Trio. And also, I think it serves to echo the statement of Ms. Paulus as well. So quoting that is, climate change requires the acceptance and participation of citizens in this multidimensional historical challenge. So what is the role of the participation of NGOs in climate change and overcoming it? I understand it's a rather broad question, but perhaps providing the opportunity to Mr. Trio to best address it by his experience.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you for the question. It is indeed a very broad question, but it's clear that when we really want to tackle climate change, when we want to go to climate neutrality, we need participation of everybody. We need governments, we need businesses, but we also need citizens to really engage into that process. And we know from previous experiences that while citizens are very much concerned about climate change, and depending on the country and the survey, etc., that goes up to 90% of European citizens that really feel that governments need to take more action on climate change, there is of course less agreement on what are the priorities for that action. And this is exactly why, for instance, in the NECPs, it is crucially important for citizens to feel that they are part of the decision making of how we are going to tackle climate change, of how we are going to take those measures, and what measures kind of need to have priority. Of course, there are challenges with how to involve citizens broadly, but I think by now there are ample opportunities of reaching out to citizens, either directly through NGOs that can play an important role in translating problems towards the broader public, but also through many of the more newer groups that have come up, of course, in particular, the youth mobilization groups that we have seen very active over the last couple of years. So there are many ways of doing that, but it is essentially crucial to ensure that citizens feel that they are part of the solution and that they feel that governments are taking measures that are really crucial in fighting climate change, and not only measures that are seen to be green but have other perspectives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trio, for your reply. Another question for our panelists is on specifically for member states, so Mr. Souza and Ms. Richter, on whether you do have some plans for innovation in national energy and climate plans, and more interestingly, planned in NGEU. And to continue with EIB also, will you be able to provide funding for the renovation wave?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. So regarding the issue of energy efficiency in buildings in the context of the renovation wave, and especially now in the context of the recovery, In our draft recovery plan that we have submitted to the Commission, we foresee 2.5 billion in additional funding of our national program for efficient buildings. So 2.5 billion of our approximately 26 billion euros of the recovery and resilience facility will go to this federal national program. Then we have two more examples for funding efficient buildings in our national recovery plan, which is one for innovative building with recycled wood, and one that is in certain aspects a bit similar to what the Commission President has proposed in her new European Bauhaus initiative, because we cooperate with cities to promote innovative projects in cooperation with architects, with city planners to create energy efficient, low energy houses. So these are the three examples that we have in our national recovery plan in the area of energy efficiency in buildings.
And maybe if I can come in. Sorry, no, wait.
Thank you so much, Antonio.
Yeah.
Just to share also the plans of Portugal in this case. It is very similar with Germany. We also included in our RRF an amount to renovations. We think that is very important to tackle this problem of energy efficiency, and the strategy that was presented last year from the Commission is very important. And in our presidency, we will give a big importance to these strategies, because it links three pillars very important for us. That is energy efficiency, as I mentioned, the recovery, and the energy poverty. So we will try to have council conclusions on this strategy, to give a strong message from the council to the investors to go and to try to get better the rate of buildings, of renovations along Europe, because we have many Europeans that cannot heat their houses, so it is problematic, and we will try to address this question also in our presidency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sousa. Mr. Almagro, you have the floor. Thank
you. Thank you. Now, just to say, in answering the question, if the EIB will support the renovation wave, I mean, the answer is a definite yes. I mean, we were going to support that. The main reason is that energy efficiency is in the core of the energy lending policy, so that we follow the principle of energy efficiency first. It's obviously cheaper to conserve energy than to generate it. We already have the instruments. I mean, it's just a combination of instruments that the bank already has. So it will be a combination of traditional lending. I mean, lending typically to municipality to rehabilitate blocks of buildings. We have project development assistance through ELENA, I mean, which was a joint facility with the Commission that basically allows the beneficiary to access funding to develop specific projects. We have instruments to support financial intermediaries when the loan from the bank is channeled through them and doesn't go directly to the final beneficiaries. And we have the possibility to support public entities to develop energy efficiency programs that can benefit also from ESIF and co-financing from the bank. So it's a clear yes, and this is a high priority for the bank.
Thank you very much, Mr. Almagro. Well, since the Commissioner, within your intervention, also mentioned the goal to double the renovation rate, I think it would also be of great added value for the discussion to receive the point of view from Mr. Trio. perhaps some comments on the statements.
Excuse me, can you reply what exactly you wanted to?
It would be specifically on the mention of the commissioner on the goal to double the renovation rate within the renovation wave.
Yes, of course, we are fully in favor of doubling, even in our view, tripling the renovation wave. It's very clear that in Europe, in a number of sectors, we've made substantial progress in reducing emissions, in particular in the power sector. But there's also a number of sectors where progress has been very limited because of many, many different reasons. Building sector is one of those, and clearly this is a big challenge, but one also where we have a potential lots of co-benefits in terms of tackling energy poverty in many of the more eastern countries, etc. So for us, putting or giving absolute priority to renovation is crucial. As I said, we are even more ambitious than the doubling. We have made kind of our own scenario of what it would mean for Europe to be in line with the Paris Agreement. And in that scenario, we would see a tripling of the renovation wave as more in line with the efforts to try to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trio, for your reply. Another question now coming from the audience is that, let me find that. All right. So the question reads, I'm surprised to hear so little discussion on energy storage. Most NECPs mention storage in passing, but don't set clear targets and strategies for energy storage deployment. Could you share your views on that? Once again, I'd like to kindly invite our speakers to take the floor. I see Mr. Trio has opened his camera.
I mean, I can only support the intervention. Yes, of course. I mean, there's many different things that are part of the transition that we need to make, which cannot all be elaborated in the limited time we have for this conference. But energy storage is crucial, definitely. If we're looking at a transition towards very efficient 100% renewable energy system, then storage will play a key role, and that role will need to be played relatively soon. So of course a lot of progress needs to be made, and we know that the Commission has supported the establishment of the Battery Alliance, which I think has made a lot of progress, but we'll need to go well beyond that single initiative if we really want to look at large-scale storage facilities all over Europe.
Thank you very much. Ms. Richter?
Yes, thank you for the question. And I fully agree that storage will play an important role in the transformation of our energy system and grid stability, but also in diversifying our energy sources and the generation sources. The IPCEI for batteries just received the green light from DG Competition, so we're on a good path there for developing battery technology further also within Europe. That's an important big step. Another important part when it comes to storage is, of course, hydrogen. So we will see how hydrogen can be used as a storage facility in the coming years. So I think these are important topics that we will continue to address in the future.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richter. I was just about to invite, I see Mr. Souza would like to take the floor. After that, I would like to kindly invite policymakers from the European Parliament. Mr. Kokalis, I see that you have opened your camera as well, and perhaps Ms. Jutta Paulus for some final wrap-up statements regarding the Q&A session and some comments we previously heard before providing the closing remarks of the event to Ms. Kumpula-Natri. So, Mr. Souza, you have the floor.
Thank you, Elias. I don't have anything to add what Ariane and Antonio just mentioned. I just want to remark the importance of storage. Of course, it is very important. I already mentioned batteries. Ariane just mentioned hydrogen. And this will be a very important energy vector for also for storage, because renewable production is intermittent, and we have to find ways of storage it, and also when we have additionality, to find ways to get into the grid. So storage is definitely very important in the renewables field, and for storage then. So I just wanted to add this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Souza. Mr. Kokalis, you have the floor.
Thank you, Elias, and thank you for this very interesting Q&A session, which showcased how multifaceted this question is and how many ways you can go about approaching it. I would like to make a short comment on the doubling or tripling the renovation rate. I think that this is the renovation wave rate. I think this is critical because it is a point which really brings together the question about public participation, public acceptance, and the issue of creating jobs. And it is a case which brings the issue home, and it tackles issues such as energy poverty as well. So I think we should have a very clear goal that we should renovate every building in Europe. And we should start by having the public authorities using the RRF to renovate all public buildings and find faster and better ways to reach at the last mile at the retail, which we currently do now with guarantees and so on. But we must find a way to make sure that we reach people's homes and they see in their own home how this is a transition that is beneficial for everyone. We now have a competition in this noble race to zero across the Atlantic, and I can even say across the British Channel, where we have we're seeing more ambitious goals from the UK than the EU, and also we're seeing the tremendous deployment of the American Green Deal, the new Green Deal in that case, with President Biden's brief executive actions a couple of days ago, where we now have a serious competition if we want to live up to our ambition to be the leaders in the race to zero. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kokalis. Ms. Paulus, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think we have heard quite a lot on ambition and on targets and goals, and I think it is now in the hand of us as legislators in the European Parliament, but also on national levels to really implement these targets and goals into the recovery and resilience plans, which are crucial because we will not have so much money again on our hands. So if we pour money into extending fossil fuel dependence, we will not be able to actually deploy the necessary technologies that we will need in a 100% renewable world. And there is no way of getting to zero without this. So I'm glad that someone mentioned the issue of energy storage, and I would like to point out that there are more ways to store energy than storing electricity only. If we look at Denmark, for example, who is a front runner in storing heat, in order to be able to do district heating with big heat storage facilities, so that we can actually put an end to the waste of energy. For example, if you look at those plants that deploy heat and electricity, nowadays they are mostly run depending on the necessity to heat buildings, even if the grid is already overflowing with electricity. So if we, for example, set up heat storage units, we can repurpose those plants to deploy electricity when it's needed and store the heat for later. And it's much, much cheaper to store heat than to store electricity. And crucial for that is that the electricity market will be changed in the way that it is already set out in European legislation, but has to be implemented at national level. So to make sector coupling possible, to make possible to adapt actually the market to renewables, because the sun shines, the wind blows whenever they want, the weather is accordingly. So we have to move from a demand-orientated market to a supply-orientated market. And that, I think, is the crucial legislative or regulatory issue that we have to tackle as soon as possible in order to give renewables the market they need to be deployed all over Europe. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you on these issues. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ms. Paulus. From a personal point of view, I couldn't sum up in the best way the discussion that previously took place. Indeed, ambitions are high, targets are set, and there are goals to be met. So now it's all about implementation. And on this note, I would like to provide the floor to Ms. Miapetra Kumpula-Natri, co-chair of the intergroup, for her closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elias, for the big role you had to bringing us together. It was a wonderful hours with you, and I personally also thank all of you having all these hours together. And I could maybe continue where Jutta started, complying and having these all together as this coupling is also one issue that we need to do it at a local, regional, like a member state level and a European level too. I'm happening to work a lot on the digitalization, and the AI Extraordinary Committee yesterday talked 3 hours about the climate and Green Deal goals with the AI, and then one certainty, which is almost as certain as sun shines and wind blows, that the digitalization will need more energy. So why not to really start building the data centers from the idea that using renewables, but then also the excess heat they provide to be able to utilize it for the heating. One example where we really need to hit the targets together. I also like to emphasize how important it is that financing goes along with the investment needs. We know the private money normally needs a predictability, and I can say they can really trust that we politicians are serious to set the goals. And if you don't believe the Europe, then you can also see the big share of the globe having this neutrality target. So demand is there. So I think we almost can talk about demand creating policies, that there should be a role for the private investors to jump in. And I appreciate EIB being here with us today with their ambitious financing targets also. And I'm very happy that we could have a short talk about the renovations too, and thanks for the good promising examples from the countries we had, because and also Kokkalis took it. Actually, now I changed the hat. I'm an S&D MEP, and today we launched our renovation strategy, which is about the win-win-win. How can we create jobs, emission cuts, and improve people's living in one shot, and then these plans and recovery monies needs to take seriously this need for socially just transition. But on behalf of the group co-chairmanship, I'm very happy to have this opportunity. Sometimes in the European level discussions, we see that the different corners from the Europe have different kind of weather, seashores, mountains, too much heat, too cold. But we see that in the internal market and with the ambitious goal, we do have a lot to share together, and we can do it more affordably when we do this together. So it was very important and nice to have you together, and then also the different institutions together, so we can work and finalize our jobs together. Thank you so much for the business part and the NGO part as well. So I hope we can continue this, not only the debate, but for the actions. Have a good afternoon all.
Thank you very much. Also, on behalf of the European Parliament Intergroup Secretariat, I would also like to extend our thanks to all of our speakers and participants for today's event, to Honorable Commissioner, Honorable Minister, on behalf of Finland, MEPs, and all speakers of today. Thank you very much to Ms. Kumpula-Natri also for taking the lead. Well, it's been a real pleasure having this event with you today on NECPs towards a climate neutral EU. We're all very much looking forward to the next ones to follow. So until then, stay safe and all the best from us as well. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.